I bet you'll never guess where I am. If you guessed Bufu's Cave, you're right. And I'm about to make episode 50 of the Doofy Doo Talk Through of Shiren the Wanderer. We are on floor 5, such a long way to go. In my super duper conservative Bufu's Cave run. If you're wondering how to guarantee that you will win the run, watch as I astound and amaze and play like a little old grandma. I don't even care that low poly dancer lowered my fullness because, thanks to last episode, I have plenty of rice balls. I'm not even going to use this rice changer to get any more. If you want to ensure that you will never go hungry again, you can make a ridiculous number of rice balls and eat them until your fullness gets all the way to 200%. Or you can become a high-level low poly dancer and do your dirty dance and raise your fullness that way. That is a big help in a very long dungeon, especially phase final puzzle when you're not sure when you might find your next rice ball. But in a short bonus dungeon like this, it's not really necessary. 100% max fullness is more than enough to beat the dungeon. Last episode I talked a little bit about the concept of safety. Hey! Get a nice little experience boost here. Come on, oh yeah. Took out the rice bus, 200 experience. My sense of experience is all completely skewed now, thanks to that dragon barbecue. I'm like, 200 experience? That's like a drop in the bucket. Why am I even trying for that? But 200 is a lot, alright? Even though at one time we did get 140,000, which sounds ridiculous just saying it. But that was my godly Doofy Doo card. This is my mere mortal Shiren the Wanderer talk through card. So 200 experience, I will take it. I am massively overleveled by the standards of this bonus dungeon. Last episode we talked about safety in gaming, and I finally remembered all the horrifying memories from Resident Evil. This episode, I'm just gonna kind of hop around from episode to episode in this final, yes you heard me, final Bufu's Cave run. Did you hear that, Shiren gods? There will be no more runs in Bufu's Cave. This is the final one. Oh, please don't let me get monster housed. But in this most likely, definitely final Bufu's Cave run, I'm just going to talk about whatever strikes my fancy this week because I don't have an overarching set of topics. Each topic is going to be loosely related to the monster I introduce, and the monster this week is really complicated. Ooh, looks like it's time for me and you to make some balls. But yeah, the new monster this week is complicated, and it's associated kinda loosely with the idea of hierarchy. Remember I said that achievers are very interested in socially defined hierarchy. That's kind of the place where they find their values and what's most important to them. If you invent some series of titles and come up with some arbitrary checklist of things to do to attain those titles, achievers will go for them because they want respect. And the way they measure respect is through goods, real or virtual. So they want a lot of stuff. They want a lot of experience and a lot of loot. That is what they are looking for. For that reason, achievers usually favor a game. You can see here I'm demonstrating a very useful trick to get rice balls, extra rice balls in phase final puzzle. You shoot a bunch of arrows and just let the rice changer rice ball one at a time. Perfect. This run is awesome. Sometimes the rice changer won't really rice change the arrows the way I want, but so far so good. But yeah, achievers favor games that have a very tall hierarchy, where there's a very large distance between the ranking of different player characters, and even the large distance between the player character and the enemy characters, or the player character and the NPCs. Because the greater that distance is, the more respect they feel. You know, the higher up you have to look to the people who have lots more stuff. The problem is when you have a society that's run by achievers for the most part, as our world and definitely our country in America seems to be. Achievers always have people higher up than them to look up to and be envious of, so they never have enough stuff. And because they already have a lot of resources, because they are achievers, that's what's important to them, so they spend a lot of time trying to gather those resources, they have a disproportionate ability to increase those resources at a much more rapid rate than other people. Whoa! You can see that even something, there again, as apparently innocuous as a Skull Mage can be really, really bad on a floor with, let's say, rice changers or even nerdy birds. If I had an herb that was really rare, like a revival herb, that Skull Mage, which normally you'd think, oh, Skull Mage, what can they do? They could knock you into an enemy, or a spiky bomb, or a rice boss, and indirectly lead to your death. So once again, the burbs always combining in interesting ways in Shiren the Wanderer. Yeah, I don't want to get all into economics and politics, but it's inevitable in a society with achievers at the top, and achievers naturally rise to the top, achievers and winners, that they're going to be disproportionately able to gather more and more resources, and the gap is going to grow and grow. And that's what we're seeing, an increasing gap in power and wealth. And I'm not going to say whether that's good or bad. I would hope that you would think that at some point that's not really a great thing to have. But we are talking about Shiren the Wanderer here in video games, so I will not go down that path any further. Now, explorers and socializers don't really favor high or tall hierarchies. They really want something flatter. Socializers, because they want people to kind of join together and help each other out, and that's really easy. If you might have had a boss where he says, my door is always open, and if that's really true, and you can go right into your boss's office and talk to her or him, and that conversation has the potential to lead to meaningful change, that's great. That means your organization really does have a flatter hierarchy. Sometimes it's just lip service though. But socializers like that kind of arrangement where there's not a whole bunch of middle managers and you never ever see the people that actually make the decisions. Because fundamentally socializers want to bring people together, and the taller the hierarchy is, the more you're isolating people at the top and at the bottom. Now explorers also favor a flatter hierarchy. Oh, I was hoping I'd get a rice boss. Robber chiefs are deceptively strong, so I'm going to try to poison this one. Good. And they don't give you much experience either. And they look like Leonardo. Explorers favor a flatter hierarchy because they realize, for the most part, eventually, that the socially defined hierarchies are arbitrary. Ooh, if I can get this meat, I will be so happy. One of the formal, oh yeah, this is the best run ever. I'm getting every kind of meat I could want. One of the little checkboxes I'm going to check off in my attempt to achieve a victory in this bonus dungeon is whether or not I can survive a monster house. And as soon as I have meat with double movement, my chances of surviving a monster house go up exponentially. But yeah, explorers realize that the hierarchies that are established in society are for the most part arbitrary. At least they are arbitrary in relation to what we value, which is the objective truth. Formal education, wealth, religious piety, even physical beauty to a certain extent. All of these things are important, obviously. Explorers can't deny that. But they're not the most important. I would say as an explorer personally, if someone has a good idea, I do my best to consider the idea on its own merits regardless of the source. Now, I can't do that perfectly because I am a human being, an animal, so I have a biological inclination to trust people who are attractive and well-groomed. But I realize that, and I try to take that into account when I'm listening to new ideas. And most of all, as an explorer, you're curious. You try to treat people as complicated human beings with agency. You never disregard anyone. So for that reason, there's kind of a flattening of the hierarchy. Everyone kind of is on the same footing for an explorer. And for that reason, coming back full circle, explorers and socializers tend to favor games that have flatter hierarchies. Think of a game like The Sims. Classic, casual socializer game. From a game design standpoint, all the characters in The Sims are roughly the same. That hierarchy is pretty flat. I always talk about Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter 2 really doesn't have any NPC characters, at least not when they made the bosses playable. You can play as anyone. Anyone has the potential to beat any other character, even though of course there are rankings and tiers. So that game has a very, very flat hierarchy. Contrast that game with a game like Dynasty Warriors, or the typical JRPG, where the player character clearly at a much higher level than any of the other enemy characters or characters in the game. The player character is like a god, and the enemy character they might as well be grass in The Legend of Zelda. They're just there to be defeated and maybe give you a little bit of resources. As far as I'm concerned, they might as well just eliminate all the little peons in Dynasty Warriors and just have your experience bar and other meters just gradually fill up over time. That would pretty much be the same thing for me. But again, I'm not an achiever. Achievers love those games. They're just like a huge system of things to unlock just for the sake of unlocking them. And your rank gradually rises and you become more and more powerful, able to defeat these mindless, meaningless little characters that have pathetic AI. So, explorers like games with flat hierarchies. Does Shiren the Wanderer have a flat hierarchy? I would say yes, it is flatter than the average RPG or even the average roguelike because of the meat system. Because you're able to become any of the monsters, it really helps you identify with them, and potentially you could go through an entire floor of Shiren as a monster, and that really flattens the hierarchy. All the monsters are basically become playable characters. And not only are they playable characters, some of them are stronger than Shiren. Uh-oh. I'm gonna try to speed heal and hopefully I'll get crossbow boy meat so I can get some iron arrows. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm gonna load up on iron arrows too. I wasn't kidding. Playing like a grandma. Yeah, if I had 29 Daredevil meats and maybe 1 Mamel meat, I could potentially make it through the entire Table Mountain dungeon, only killing a single mammal, and I'd beat the whole game. So that is flat hierarchy. Not only are the monsters all playable, some of them are really powerful. Hell Dragon, I could just sit there as a Hell Dragon and beat most floors too. Alright, I better move on. I didn't get a chance to talk about the enemy I designed that flattens the hierarchy. I will do that next episode on Shiren the Wanderer. See you all then. Imagine all the monsters being playable. Let me say, as a gamer, that sounds like lots of fun. And if the NPCs are well designed, I'd really love to play as one.
Ooh, looks like it's time for me and you to make some balls.